Welcome to the Creative Mind Smart Money podcast, where we turn financial confusion into creative confidence. I'm Samantha Eck, bookkeeper and fractional CFO for creative entrepreneurs. Each week, I'm sharing my financial expertise and actionable strategies to help you build a thriving creative business. Plus, you'll hear from industry experts who bring fresh perspectives on growing your business beyond the numbers. Because building a successful creative business starts with strong financial foundations. Your next chapter starts now. Welcome back to another episode of Creative Mind Smart Money. And today I'm very excited to talk about how to financially prepare for big life changes. And this episode comes with the news from one of my clients talking about how she is wanting to start preparing for maternity leave. And that's a big life change. And I think there's too many times where us as service providers feel like we might not be able to do this. And that's why I want to talk about how to financially prepare for it. So, how do you prepare yourselves for these big life changes? Maybe you're taking a sabbatical. Maybe you're having a kid. Maybe you are, in worst case scenarios, maybe you are sick and you need to go through medical treatment and you need time to take away, but you don't want your business to stop running so that when you are through whatever you're going through, you come out on the other end and you can handle it. So there's tons that business owners face that finances actually have to be ready for. And those are just a small smattering of them. And financial prep is so different when you're self-employed versus when you're an employee, obviously, because you have so much more going on. You have your business expenses, but you also have to account for yourself. And then you've just got employees and things like that. You have a bunch of stuff that just ends up being added and being compounded to that kind of needs to be thought about. There's obviously a lot of safety nets that employees have that creatives and self-employed people don't, which is, they have benefits. They have maternity leave that they can take and still get paid from work. When you are a self-employed person, you can't just be like going to yourself essentially and saying, hey, I'm taking maternity leave. I need to get paid for this, right? Especially if you're a website designer or if you are someone who has deliverables that need to get delivered on a consistent basis. It's a lot harder to take that break or to take that time off. You don't have any paid leave when you are self-employed. There's no maternity leave. There's no bereavement leave. There's no medical leave. There's nothing like that. There is no employer-sponsored short-term or long-term disability. So if you hurt yourself on the job, maybe you are a crafter and you cut your finger open while you're in the middle of a project, there's no pay for that, right? And there's no employer-paid health insurance unless, of course, even then, you can get employer-paid health insurance, but your business is covering that. So obviously your premium stays whether your income is coming in or not. Income stops or dips the moment you step back, and there's no severance, no notice period, and no transition pay. So, we know that as business owners, we're the face of our business. And when we take that step back and we kind of draw back, there's no break. There's no, we know that there's pay. So obviously, there's a lot of changes that happen the day it lands. All of a sudden, if there's no pay coming in or we're not able to market and we're not able to do things a certain way, now we have to figure out how do we account for our business? How do we keep our business going when we need to take a step back, when things need to happen? So that's where the planning for the intentional changes needs to happen. And we need to talk about what that financial prep looks like for something, whether that's maternity leave, a move, a sabbatical, going back to school, maybe a relocation, and I can kind of chat about this with a move, going through it myself. So obviously, one of the things that I want to talk about and what we've talked about before is a buffer, and that's the 12-month ahead buffer. So building a savings buffer for the leave typically starts a year out because 3 months ahead is already too late. So if you're thinking about maybe taking maternity leave and you want to spend a year with your child and you have contractors, you have a bunch of things like that. So your business can keep running. You have a social media manager. You have ways that your business can keep going without you being there consistently every step of the way. But you need to have, a plan for that. And maybe you need to make sure that even though you're booked out, you need to have money in the bank and you need to have money consistently. So that's making sure that you're accounting for all those expenses and setting aside the right amount for all of them. Obviously, adjusting contracts, pausing onboarding, setting expectations with current clients in advance so it's not a surprise. When I went through my move last month in May, the one of the things that was very important to me was letting my clients know, hey, like I am in the middle of a move. I'm not going to be able to look at my email a lot. I'm not going to be able to do a lot of the client work, but I made sure that all of my monthly deliverables got out before I did my move because that was important to me, was to make sure that my clients had what they needed. But then also letting them know so it's not a surprise. Like when we go to Korea in November, I'm not going to let my clients know in November. I'm probably going to let them know in September. Some of my friends and clients already know. They already know I'm going to Korea. The plan around that is to kind of let them know a little bit later, obviously. They don't need to know now because they're going to forget by November, right? So keeping them in mind in September is a good thing. And then, of course, what monthly revenue do you need to be back at by month 3, 6, 12 after the leave? So if you have to take a step back and maybe you just are dealing with retainer clients, but you're not onboarding new people, what goals do you want to be at after you come back? Thinking about like all these things in advance. I know that sounds crazy. You're like, how do I predict all of this? It's not about predicting necessarily. It's about setting yourself up for success and thinking about all these things in advance so that when you do come back or whenever things are going on, you already know. And then, of course, you want to understand what your true monthly burn rate is. And that's the question that I was asking, or the thing that I wanted you to think about is what's your true monthly costs? So software, contractors, what your office might cost, your rent, insurance, everything like that. And how many months of a buffer does it actually require? So just thinking about and looking at all of that is super, super, super important and very vital to your whole picture. So yeah, all this is stuff that we need to think about, and how far in advance we need to start planning depends on how long of a leave, how many things are going on, everything like that, because you need to start making those intentional plan for your business as a business owner. Okay. So obviously we've talked about the intentional planning, but what happens when a big change isn't planned? Obviously, illness, a family emergency, burnout, a partner's job loss, just a billion and one things that could go wrong that are just not planned. And obviously, what's going on. So I've talked about this before, but this is exactly why a business emergency fund is a non negotiable and why I tell every client, every person that I work with that you should have this. You need 3 months of operating expenses in a separate account that aren't touched for anything else but an emergency fund. It's the same thing, that we do in our personal lives. We have a fund just in case of emergencies or anything goes wrong. Same thing. You need to have that. You need to have systems that let the business keep functioning if you do need to take a step back for 30 days. That delegation, automation, a break glass SOP that someone can actually follow. If you have contractors or someone who can step in, like, for example, we're working with my OBM to make sure that I'm not a bottleneck. She has the ability to respond to questions or things. If I needed to take a step back, she could step in and be able to handle anything that might need to be handled, a question or even a process, whatever it is. Obviously, we have those insurance gaps. So short-term disability, life insurance, business interruption coverage. Those are all conversations to have with an actual, financial advisor who can advise you on it personally, and an insurance broker that's not me. But those are things that you really do need to think about. Like, are the things that you need to invest in? The legal protections as well are like a will, a business succession plan, a power of attorney covering business accounts, also conversations to have with an attorney, not just me. For example, in my business, I have a in case of emergency plan that is built in so that if, God forbid, if I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, my husband could literally look at this document and know everything in this document so that he could get access to bank accounts, he could get access to emails, he could get access to wherever in order to be able to do what he needs to do to either close out my business or anything. So obviously the difference between a creative who is prepared and one who isn't is one who maybe has a family member die and it's very affecting to them. And now they have to deal with not being able to do work or not being able to do things that they now need to kind of deal with and focus on. So that's something that you need to think about as well. There's just a million and one different things to think about. And I'm not trying to scare you into thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is scary. But there's so much that goes into the preparation and planning of these things. And sometimes there's not. Sometimes things happen. But when you have a backup plan and you're prepared for it, that makes things 1,000 times easier. So obviously, when we are running our own business and we're self-employed, when we need to step away, it's very hard for us to do so. And the reason is because when the business is us, we are the business, we're the face of the business, it feels like we're stepping back. So obviously, our identity is tied to the productivity of the business. But that's why we build all these systems, why we build all these things that are going on. The fear of losing momentum or clients, which is absolutely real. And it's why we have good prep to prevent these kinds of fears. If we lose a client, hey, we still have expenses covered. We still have everything like that covered. We're good so that we have some time to pick our feet back up again. The guilt around rest when income is variable. So there is a real guilt around people being like, oh, can I take a break when, I'm the face of the business and my income is so unpredictable. And it doesn't go away just because you can afford the break on paper. You're still thinking about it, right? So the story underneath that resistance is that we're just concerned about the fact, like, can my business survive this? And of course, most creatives need someone outside the business to look at their numbers and tell them they're actually allowed to take the time, that they can afford to take the time. Like, for example, one of my clients is going to Japan for a couple weeks, and she's good. She can leave. We have payroll covered. We have everything else covered. Her work is covered by her contractors, everything like that. There's nothing that she needs to worry about. And our next step is planning for her maternity leave. Of course, like, we're thinking about all these things. But again, if you're the face of the business, taking a step back does not automatically mean that your business is going to fail. Okay? And of course, now we need to think about, what does real preparedness look like? Like, what does being prepared for these kinds of breaks look like? The number one thing you can do right now is start an emergency fund, obviously. Start that emergency fund today. Even if it's one step by step. Like the one client that I'm doing her budget on, we're working on one subscription at a time. Every month, we're going to put away an additional month of a subscription. And we're just continuing to build that until we're a month ahead. And then once we're a month ahead, we'll work on getting 2 months ahead, et cetera, so that we can just continue to do that, even if it's slow. And if you have extra funds, maybe you want to make it a little bit faster, but that's up to you and where you're at, right? And when you're fully prepared and everything feels good, you feel stable. Like, you're scared, obviously, because you're like, oh my gosh, I run my own business, but you also feel stable. So there's obviously a cash architecture. You need to have 3 buckets, and we're going to talk about these buckets later on. But a tax reserve for your taxes, for your estimated taxes, everything like that. An emergency fund that is a fund that's kind of like going up for, whenever you might have an emergency, and a opportunity fund. So these buckets all need to be sized correctly for your business. They need to have all these things going on. The opportunity fund is mainly for like bigger expenses, things like that. You need to have a cash flow forecast that models what 30, 60, 90 days of your business actually does, like off of your business actually does, so that the answer is known instead of feared. Like when we look at my cash flow with this one client who's leaving for Japan, she already knows she's covered. So she knows that it's not even a blip. It's not even a blip on her radar. She's letting her clients know, but it's literally not even affecting her at all. And then, of course, a document that captures who runs what if you step back. So vendors, software logins, client communication, payment processing, the bookkeeping handoff, whatever it is, who's running all this stuff so that you can take that step back. And if you have people running it and you already have these SOPs in place and your business is running the way you want it to, then you don't need to worry about it. And there's a peace of mind that comes from knowing the answer to what would happen if I took this step back tomorrow, instead of just hoping that you might have to find out, okay? So obviously, the level of preparedness that goes into this is going to be something that's going to be focused on in some of my bigger packages, some of the things that we're doing. And if you have a big change on the horizon and maybe you're thinking, okay, am I ready for this? That could be a conversation that we could have. So just shoot me a message and let's talk about that. Like, what big life changes do you have coming up and what things do we need to prepare you for? As always, you guys, If you loved this episode and you liked it, please like it, share it, subscribe on social media. I always appreciate you guys hanging out with me and listening to my voice and listening to the things I have to say. If you need anything else, just let me know. As always, I wish you the best week ever. We'll see you next week. Farewell, fellow travelers.